just to get started in talking about what we're going to go over today. So, first off, just so everyone knows at the beginning here, is that I use Lego photos in my presentations because burnout is arguably one of the least fun topics to talk about. When it's like, let's talk about how our work is making the rest of our life really tough. And so instead of just being in this like kind of mindset, Lego people make me chuckle, and so I put them in my presentation so that we can at least enjoy ourselves while we're talking about something that's not always super fun. So, who was here last year? Was there anyone who attended my session last year, or we all knew? Fabulous, great! I was going to say, if anyone was here last year, the first maybe 10 minutes will be reviewed for you, but I know you don't have my presentation memorized, so it would be a good review because it's been a year. So the disclaimer for this is that I cannot fix your burnout problems in 1 hour, in less than an hour. It was going to be 50 minutes, it's now more like 35. So I can't fix all your burnout problems. What I can do in an hour is I can help you with a mindset shift. Which, if you shift your mindset around the chronic stress that creates burnout, that is absolutely foundational, and that can move mountains in how you approach your work and in the prevention of burnout. So that's what we're going to focus on in this session. So we're going to start with burnout basics. I'm going to give you a few metaphors to try to help you figure out what works the best for my brain and how I view burnout so that I will approach it differently. The second one, we're going to work on identifying beliefs that are affecting how we view our work. Because again, this mindset shift, it's all set in mental models that are created based on our beliefs. And then we're going to work on some self-compassion, where we're going to ask for a brave volunteer to help us in demonstrating something so that we can really see how this works. So really quick, Shauna mentioned before, but just a real quick summary of me. Back in 2017, I burned out spectacularly because I'm an overachiever and I do everything just more than I need to. So I ended up trying to go back to work part-time after I quit my full-time job. Couldn't do it because I hadn't actually learned these skills that I'm teaching you today. And so I went back to work and I had all the same triggers. Burnout has some overlap with PTSD, so it had all the same triggers. I couldn't hold that part-time job. So I had actually ended up with developing health problems, such as chronic fatigue, where I was sleeping a full night, full 8 hours, totally rested, but then I'd sleep an extra 6 hours during the day. Instead of going to work, I was sleeping. And then I also developed debilitating anxiety, where going to the grocery store would reduce me to tears. It was that bad. And so I spent 5 years, between 2017 and 2022, trying to figure out how to fix my burnout. And unfortunately, doctors and therapists don't know what to do about burnout. They don't really understand it. Again, it's not a medical diagnosis, it's not a mental health diagnosis, so they're not trained on it. What ended up actually helping me was I started using a boundaries coach that was actually because I was having problems in my marriage at the time. And so I was trying to get some emotional balance with those interpersonal relationship problems, but that coaching, the boundaries that I was learning how to put in place and the actual advocating for myself and self-care and things like that, that's what actually made it. So all of a sudden, the first thing that happened within 2 months of working with that coach was I recovered from my burnout that I couldn't recover from in the past 5 years. So that was the beginning of me saying, okay, there's actually a way to prevent this and to recover from this more intentionally. And so I ended up returning to the workforce in the field of prevention and public health, and I saw this gap of, because burnout isn't a mental health or medical diagnosis, there's no industry that's really taking it on. So I said, well, I'm going to take my prevention science background and apply it to the burnout world so that I can make an impact as much as I can here at Utah. So I ended up getting certified as an executive coach, and now this is a chunk of what I do in my bonus time. I couldn't hold a job before, now I have a full-time job and I have a business on the side. So if you're feeling burnt out, just know, you can recover from it. So we're going to start out with these burnout basics, like I mentioned. And I do like to start off, first thing, before we go anywhere else. I don't know why you're sitting in this room today. You might be sitting here because you feel burnt out already. You might be sitting here because you experienced burnout in the past, and you were like, that was terrible. I don't want to go through that again. You might be sitting here just because you know maybe you get to the edge of burnout, or you know that just being a teacher, it just gets stressful and you just want some help with that. whatever the reason is, if you are feeling burnt out, if you have felt burnt out, there's nothing wrong with you. There's absolutely nothing wrong with you. Burnout is a normal human response to chronic stress that has built up over time. But we have a tendency, when we stop functioning the way that we normally do, we start asking ourselves, what's wrong with me? When we should be asking ourselves, what's happening to me to cause my body to shut down? So I love this gift because this is what burnout looks like. So I don't know if you guys have seen this before. This was on America's Funniest Home Videos back in the day. And this kid is stacking bricks. He puts the last brick on, and then because it's on a glass table, it breaks through, and everything falls down. The entire table collapses. I'm going to have you guys shout out the answer to this question to me. Is there anything inherently wrong with a glass table? Yes or no? Somebody doesn't like glass tables. Okay, no, there's nothing wrong with a table. There's nothing inherently wrong with a table. Is there anything inherently wrong with stacking bricks on top of each other? Yes or no? No. No. And so, what we need to see, again, this is your first metaphor when it comes to burnout, is you need to see yourself as a table. Any table has a certain amount of load that it can withstand. If there's too much load that's put on it, it's going to collapse. That's to be expected. So there's nothing wrong with you if you're a table. There's actually nothing wrong with the load that you're carrying. It just happens to be that the combination of those two things didn't match. This is the first kind of moving towards mindset stuff. This is something in helping professions we are terrible at keeping in the front of our minds, is that I'm human and therefore I have limited capacity. As teachers, y'all are overachievers. You're massive overachievers. You go above and beyond. And I love that about you, but I don't love it when it's at the expense of your own health. I don't love it when it's costing you your own quality of life and ability to show up fully because you're starting to become over-depleted and drained. So we have to understand that we may have the ability to take something extra on, but it might not actually be within our capacity to really do it. So sensitivity around that is really important. So here's these kind of boring basics. Burnout is a syndrome. That's what it's considered right now. And I believe it's going to be redefined some more as continuing research comes out. It's conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. That's it. It's just stress that's built up and hasn't been managed well. I don't like the term stress management because that's just gotten really watered down. And so I don't teach stress management. I teach stress reduction. How do we actually reduce the stress in our lives? Because that's what will prevent the table from collapsing. So these are the three characteristics of burnout, where energy depletion, like I mentioned, I suffer from chronic fatigue when I burnt out. Also, mental distance from our jobs. So that can look like cynicism. It can also look like something called depersonalization, which is when we stop caring about the people that we work with. So as teachers, that means you get to the point where you're like, I don't care if my students pass their today. Whatever. It doesn't matter to me anymore. And that, again, that type of mindset, that's when we start asking ourselves, what's wrong with me? I feel like a bad person for thinking this way. There's nothing wrong with you. Your brain is reacting exactly as it would when there's too much load that's been put on it. Also, reduce professional efficacy. This is basically a negative, it's a pessimistic evaluation of your own performance. This is when you start saying, like, what's the point? Like, I don't even know if I'm making the impact. Like, I don't know if it matters. We just start to shut down and think that really there's no point and we really kind of suck at our jobs. So that looks like a loss of energy, a loss of enthusiasm, and a loss of confidence. So if you're experiencing any one of those, you're on the way, potentially, to burnout. If you're experiencing all of those, you might be to the point of burnout. Burnout kind of happens on a spectrum. Real, actual, full burnout is generally when you have to quit your job because it's that bad. A lot of people say they're burnt out when really they're just starting, they're kind of moving towards burnout on the spectrum. So we want to catch it early and turn it around. That's why we're talking about prevention, so we don't actually get to that full burnout point. Here's your second metaphor. Who here has ever been in a rocky relationship? Raise your hands. We got 2 people, 3 people. Okay, guys, come on. I know it's time for lunch. I know it's after lunch. I'm going to make it, there is interaction here, and you're going to have to really interact later if you actually want to get the goods out of this presentation. So I'll let you off on raising your hands, but you are going to be required to interact earlier. later. So, okay, so rocky relationship. So for those of you that are Marvel fans, you guys know these guys are friends, and then in Captain America Civil War, they get into a big Civil War. They get into a big fight. So people need to see, when you think about burnout, it basically look at it as it's an interaction. Burnout happens at the intersection of you and your work. So you need to think of yourself as being in a relationship with your job. And if things are not going well, then that's where burnout happens, is at the intersection. So again, it's usually not just one person's fault when a relationship is going wrong. Usually, both people contribute a little bit. And so it's the same thing here. I, as an executive coach working on burnout, what I do is I help to reconcile those differences. You can think of me like a relationship coach. It's just that it happens to be you and your work. And so what we want to do is try to reconcile those differences and bring them more into alignment so that we can have a healthier relationship with our work. So what this looks like is basically think of yourself as having a certain chemical makeup, all your characteristics, and then your environment or your work situation having a certain chemical makeup, and those things combine to create the satisfaction that you find in your workplace. So it might be that your chemical components have a not great reaction with your work because of the chemical components in the environment that you find yourself in. And so what we can do to change it so we don't have an adverse reaction in this chemical compound is we change the chemical makeup of either ourselves or the environment. If you have two chemicals that you're putting together, but you change their makeup, change one of their makeup, you're going to get a different reaction, right? So what we're going to be focusing on today is you. You see the mindset and the beliefs piece on the you side. That's something that I can work on actually helping you shift in, like I said, the less than an hour that we have together. And so this is the burnout prevention equation that I teach to people. I'm only touching on really reducing the stress response today. So reducing stressors would be working on reducing things that are in your environment. Reducing the stress response is making it so that we actually react differently to our environment, so that the things that happen to us that normally stress us out are not going to stress us out as much. And then also learning how to recover better from stress is another piece of that equation that can make it so that you are burnout proof. I now know that I am burnout proof. I will never burn out again because of the things that I've learned. It is possible to get there. You just have to learn the right skills and then you apply them. So I can't get you burnout proof in an hour. I wish I could, but we're gonna at least work in one direction on reducing the stress response. So we're gonna talk about identifying what beliefs are creating mindsets that might be inducing more stress than necessary in our work lives. This is something that is normal across helping professions, like I said. My background is in nonprofits. Those are also a group of people who bend over backwards for their work. And unfortunately, what we do is we create internal pressure on ourselves that creates additional stress inside of our bodies that builds up over time. And then again, that's when the body starts to shut down, when we start to have these weird symptoms and we're like, what's wrong with me? The table is breaking just because it's getting pressure from the outside. Usually the things that we point at, if I ask you why you're burning out, you say, well, our administration is really frustrating. Or the parents, the parents are crazy, Chelsea. Or the students, they're not doing the things that I need them to do. Or just the workload, there's just so much that's expected of us because of how the system is. You can point to all those things, they're all external to you. They either cannot be controlled or they can only be influenced. And again, this is something I could coach you on if you had more time. I might touch on those things as well. But we're going to focus on what you have 100% control on today. So do know that I acknowledge that the external stuff is very real and it absolutely contributes to burnout. We're just going to tackle the one thing that we can make the most progress on, which is the internal pressure that is created in response to these external things that come up in our work. So first, just understanding of what beliefs are. So beliefs form the foundation for our worldview and how we navigate life. So something may happen in your work that stresses you out and doesn't stress your coworker out. And that's because you have different beliefs about that particular thing. So they act as a filter for perceptions and interpretations. Something happens and we perceive it and interpret it a certain way, which then guides our decisions, our actions, and our interactions with others, which then shapes our behaviors and our reactions based on what we hold to be true. So reactions like the stress response. So it's this kind of trickle-down effect of how our brain interprets the world around us and then turns into a stress response or not. So we're gonna work on diverting that today. So I did want to have a digital worksheet for you guys, and then it wasn't working. So this is the part. I'm going to have you guys pull out your phones, since we're enforcing you to interact, but you guys love pulling out your phones. We all do it. So pull it out, please. Bring out either, it's just something that you can write on. We're going to basically be filling out a worksheet. So whether it's your notes app, if you're not somebody who has a notes app on your phone right now, you can write an email to yourself, you can create a text to yourself. Just pull up something, because if you're not writing this down, if you're like, I'll just do it in my head, I promise you it's not going to be as useful to you, this exercise that we're going to do. So, who's got their phone out? Who's feeling ready to dive into some belief stuff? Okay, you guys totally have the after lunch coma. I am sorry that I'm over here requiring you to interact, but I figured this is how you get more out of it. Okay. So we're going to identify some beliefs first. So I want you to fill in these sentences. You don't have to write the whole sentence on your notes app, but fill in the blank. Whatever your knee-jerk response is. I try hard to be blank. The main reason people like me is because I blank. Other people don't appreciate how much I blank. I always have to be the one who blanks. I've tried to be the kind of person who blank. I'm going to give you guys a minute to write those things down. Now, once you've finished that, filled out all of those, take a minute to look at the patterns. What do you see showing up that's repetitive? What seems to be sticking out or is highlighted by these particular phrases? I'm not going to ask anyone to share, don't worry. This is some personal introspection. And I would write that down, right, whatever the pattern is, because again, we're going to take this and there's more to this exercise. This is why you got to write it down, because it's a multi-step exercise, so I'll give you another few seconds. Actually, I'm going to have you raise your hand when you're feeling good. Again, I'm not going to call on you when you're like, I'm ready to move on. We got a couple people. This is how I force you guys to raise your hands, because if you don't raise your hand, we're not moving. We're just staying in this life for the rest of the hour. Okay, who else is feeling? You still working? Who's ready to move on? I'll just ask the question first. Okay, we're feeling good. All right, fabulous. Okay, so now that we've pulled that up, whatever that particular pattern is in your life, it has to do with your perceptions of yourself. This is what we want to keep in mind. Beliefs become internal stressors when they are challenged or contradicted, when other people hold different beliefs, or when our beliefs are inherently negative. Okay? So, these beliefs that we have about ourselves have a tendency to create what are called mental icebergs. So, we all know that an iceberg, you can see it on the top, but the majority of it is underneath the surface. So, what happens then, the way that you can identify these is that they show up through over or under reactions to things, pet peeves that we might have, and long-term stewing about stuff. So what showed up for you, you might notice in the pattern that you identified in the first part of that exercise. You might be like, yeah, actually, I am a little sensitive around that. We end up then creating rules for ourselves. These rules usually have words like always or never, should or shouldn't, have to, need to, or must, best, perfect, most important, failure, or weakness. So here's some examples of rules that people might create for themselves based on mental icebergs that they have. I should have my act together all the time. I need to be perfect so others approve of me. I have to work all the time to be successful. I have to control everything or things will go wrong. I have to have all the answers. I should know what I'm doing. If I want it done right, I have to do it myself. People should see things my way. Failure is a sign of weakness. Strong people don't ever ask for help. My way is the best way. Do you see how stressful these thoughts are? Who's feeling the stress? I mean, as I was reading those, I'm like, this would be terrible if this was the mental chatter that you had in your head. But these are the types of rules that we create for ourselves. So we're going to pull that out of what you did in that first step of the exercise. So step 2 is to look at the insights that you got from that first step and figure out what's the rule that you've created for yourself. I have to, it's usually something like, I have to blank. So for me, when I did this exercise originally, what I realized is that my rule was I have to be seen as amazing at what I do. If I'm not seen as amazing, oh actually, no, that's the next step, sorry guys. Start with, what is it that you have to? I have to be, or I have to do, I have to be seen, I have to, however this shows up for you, figure out what is that statement. And once you got that down, then you can go on to number 3, which is restating it as an if-then statement so that you can identify the consequences. So mine was, if I'm seen as amazing, then I'm valuable and I won't get fired. So if I'm seen as amazing, my boss and my coworkers, then that means I'm valuable. What does it mean? The then is usually what does it mean? Then I'm valuable and I won't get fired. And you can see how that type of thinking creates a constant fear where anytime that I didn't feel like I was doing amazing, I was at risk of getting fired. I was constantly anxious at work, expecting my boss to be like, yeah, and you gave me all this good feedback over here, but you really screwed up over here. And so I was just waiting for the shoe to drop of like that I was going to get fired, which was unrealistic, completely unrealistic, but it was literally there because of my subconscious having this fixation on this particular thing. And so whatever our rules are, a lot of times it creates stress around social interactions with people, how we're expected to show up, how we're expected to perform. So these rules, they may show up around your performance. They might show up around like your interpersonal dynamics with people. How are we feeling? Who's ready to move on to the next one? I see some hands. Okay, I think we're ready to move on. All right, so we've identified the iceberg. We've created, we've figured out, okay, here's a rule that's swimming around in my brain that hopefully I wasn't aware of before, but now I am. So now we're going to shift a little bit. I'm going to guide you through this. We're going to shift from the beautiful truths that we've been telling ourselves, the beautiful lies that we've been telling ourselves, into being able to confront the ugly truths of life, which are not that ugly when we actually look at them, but for some reason, again, we get a little scared of them. So this is the difference between denying versus acknowledging reality. So this has to do with your capacity, your preferences, your expectations, and your needs. So the beautiful lie that I was telling myself is that I have to be amazing all the time. I have to be seen as amazing. And so that creates this expectation of where I need to be. And that is a lie, but it's like, oh, but I'm valuable. Again, that's what's beautiful about it, is that if I'm amazing, then I'm valuable. I feel safe then. So then I'm not stressed, except that I'm constantly, if we go back to this, I'm constantly afraid of that belief being challenged. That's the problem, is that if there's evidence in my experience or in my environment that contradicts this narrative, this rule that I've created for myself, then it creates this super stressful response because I'm trying to reconcile, I'm trying to protect myself by asserting that this narrative is true. I'm amazing and therefore I am valuable. And I should be fired then. This is how we protect ourselves, but we do it from a place of fear, unfortunately. So, now we're going to identify the contradictions. So step 4, taking the rule that you just created, the if-then, identify the general reality that your if-then statement is contradicting. So for me, the general reality is that people can't be amazing at everything all the time. That's just like a general rule for life. But I was operating as if I had to be. So when I finally pulled this out, I was like, okay, let's just look at this objectively. We're just going to take a step back. This is one of the ugly truths of life, is that no one's amazing at everything all the time. Oh, it's not actually that ugly when you look at it, but it felt ugly at first because it felt more beautiful and safer to be believing that I'm amazing and valuable because of that. When you feel like you've identified the general reality, then you identify the personal reality that this rule has been avoiding. For me, that was, I'm not amazing sometimes. There's some things I'm not amazing at. The word, it was both, for me, it was both the word amazing and competent. I had to be seen as competent all the time at everything I did. And I cannot tell you the freedom that I experienced when I landed on this number 5, and what I told myself, the ugly truth that I got out of that was, I'm incompetent. Oh my gosh. I'm incompetent sometimes? I'm allowed to be incompetent? Are you serious? It relieved so much pressure and stress that I had created for myself. I was allowed to be incompetent at certain things. I didn't have to be amazing at every single thing that I did. I was allowed to be human. And I wasn't going to get fired for that. And terrible, terrible things weren't going to happen just because of these little things that came up that were threatening, again, that rule that I had created. So, again, once you got through number 5, I'm going to give you a minute, I'm going to stop talking, I'm going to give you a minute to write down just what insights came up from this exercise, just what thoughts you're having. Because again, this is kind of a deep dive. I know you guys were not expecting this, but as an executive coach, it's based in positive psychology. I'm making you guys do a little bit of heart and mind work, and then we're going to move on to, now that we've pulled this up, what do we do with it? So, I don't know what your rule is, I don't know what your new personal reality is. Mine was, I'm incompetent sometimes, and I'm allowed to be, that's great. So once you've landed on that, just write down a few reflections. What does that mean to you? How does that feel? Okay, raise your hand if you're feeling ready to move on. Got a couple of people. You guys have the shyest hands. It's really cute. Okay, thank you. In the back. We'll wait another couple minutes because I'm assuming that other people are still writing, not that they've moved on to texting their friends. I might be wrong, but I'm going to give you guys the benefit of the doubt. Give you a couple more seconds. Okay, friends. We feeling good? Ready to go? Maybe. You guys still, you're in this coma. All right. So, again, this is, when we, in doing this exercise, a lot of the internal stress that's created that compounds the external stressors, remember, the administration, the system, the parents, the students, the workload, whatever it is, that is creating your stress that you naturally point at when someone asks, why are you feeling burnt out? that is compounded by how we respond to it. So again, if, for example, you have a bad interaction with a parent, you're like, that did not go well. Like maybe the student wasn't doing that great, and you were talking to the parent's freaking out about it, and you're like, you just felt like it got tense, you didn't say the right things, you maybe said some stuff that you felt like aggravated the situation, and you just blah. Like that maybe you have, for me, we'll just use my example, of I would be over here like, I suck right now, like, because I'm supposed to be amazing at everything that I do. I'm supposed to be confident in all the things. And so being able to release that belief and be like, no, I'm having a human day where I get to make mistakes and I'm not always going to be amazing all the time. Again, your rule might be different and it might not be as general as mine. Like mine kind of apply to everything. Yours might be a little more specific to something that creates more stress for you. But just know the truth, no matter how ugly, leads to freedom, which is why we want to be looking at the ugly truths and the reality of like giving ourselves permission to be human. That's what the difference is between the beautiful lies and the ugly truths. The beautiful lies is that I am superhuman. I don't make mistakes, and I'm fantastic and amazing all the time in whatever area it is that we're creating unnecessary pressure for ourselves. And the ugly truth is actually you're human, and you're gonna fall short. And you can't be super teacher for every single one of your kids. You can't save all of them. You can't be the perfect, again, like whether it's working with the students or, if the system or whatever, if your administration is really making your life difficult, you're not always going to be perfect at responding to that, at dealing with that. So we're gonna now move on to self-compassion, which is how we really give ourselves permission. So I need to ask for a brave volunteer to be, to demonstrate this for us, because self-compassion, this is one of, actually I would say this is probably the most powerful tool that I can teach people because of how much it's just very mobile. You can take it and apply it to anything. And you don't technically need a coach. I figured this out on my own just from reading stuff. So self-compassion is important because people who are self-compassionate are less likely to experience shame and self-loathing, get overwhelmed by stress, feel isolated, ruminate, develop anxiety, become hopeless, develop fear of failure or imposter syndrome, or get burned out and depleted by the work. All these things that lead to burnout because of that level of stress. Self-compassion is basically like a pressure valve where it releases the pressure so that we can unload stress that's built up, so that we don't end up building it up so much that then the table collapses. So the volunteer that I would like is just somebody who's willing to just share an experience of something where you're like, this is a little uncomfortable. Something didn't go well. Something that you're struggling with. Again, it could have been an interaction, and it could be from recently, it doesn't have to be a work thing, it could be from last school year. Again, it could be talking with a parent or a student or whatever it looks like. So, who would like to be our volunteer? Who's feeling brave? Okay, awesome. You want to come up here? Yay, let's give her a hand. Fantastic. Come on up. All right, so step one, what we're going to do is we're going to state the situation, just the facts. This is like a court of law, so we're not adding the emotion and the subjective. It's literally what happened as you're setting the scene in a play.
I was asked to take on extra duties at school.
Fabulous. That's it. One of the reasons that we start with this is because by separating the emotional piece, we're able to get into a brain where we can actually step outside of really being in the middle of the emotional mess. So, okay, nothing crazy happened. It wasn't that, it didn't have to be overwhelming. It's just asked to have extra duty at school. Okay, so then when that happened, what were the emotions you were feeling?
I had already done these extra duties in another school, and I knew how awful it was. I knew I couldn't do it. I knew it was overwhelmed. I didn't know how to say no.
Fabulous. Okay. So specifically, you're going to say, I was frustrated, I was stressed. What were whether it's 1, 2, 3 specific emotions that came out of that experience?
Overwhelmed, frustrated, and just trying to figure out what to say.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. So that was step 2 of identifying the emotion you're feeling. The next one is to normalize the experience. So this is in self-compassion, we learn how to talk to ourselves like our best friend. We're rewriting that negative self-talk that comes from those rules of like, you have to be amazing all the time or else. So normalizing your experience usually comes out as like, of course, X, Y, of course you felt frustrated. Anyone in your shoes would feel that way. Or it's the of course and the anyone that is just like, this is super normal. It's normal to feel X, Y, Z. So give yourself a sentence or two about that.
It's okay. I took a few days to decide and did not react immediately.
Okay.
So I took it and just like, I took a step back and said, I don't have to decide this right now. I'm going to think about it.
Okay. But this is uncomfortable for you.
Yes.
And so what can you speak to that specific discomfort and normalizing the discomfort that you're allowed to be in that space?
Yeah, I told myself it's okay to feel uncomfortable with this, and that's why I wasn't going to make that decision right this very second. Because if I do, I always make the wrong decision.
Fabulous. Thank you. Okay. The next step is to share some kindness with yourself. So this is being supportive, encouraging, and loving towards yourself. So what are some kind words? Again, just talking to yourself like your best friend in that situation where you're like, I'm stressed and this is really uncomfortable that I've been put in this position. I'm not quite sure what to do. I advocated for myself for a few days, but I'm still uncomfortable. What would your best friend say to you in that situation?
You already did it. You rocked it. You don't have to do it again. That's what I was saying. So. And that it was okay that I didn't have to. It was okay. I don't have to do everything I'm asked. It's okay to say no. That's what I was telling myself.
I love that. You actually moved to the last step, which is giving yourself permission. So giving yourselves permission to be human. You're allowed to do these things. So is there anything else that comes to mind when you think about you're allowed to, it's okay to, you have permission to X, Y, Z in that situation?
No, it's been a long time. I've had to work. I'm a yes person. I always have been. And I've had to learn how to say no. And I've had to learn it's okay to say no. And by me saying no, it doesn't mean I'm a bad person, that I'm not helping, that I don't show love, that I'm not important. I'm still all those things.
100%. Thank you so much. Thank you guys. Give her hands. So, obviously, this is something that happened last year. And so it's been a while. She's worked on it. She actually did a really good job advocating for herself. I love that. I love that. She'd obviously already worked through this. When you do this in the middle of something, I will tell you a lot of times, if I do this exercise and I have someone volunteer and it's like in a small group, like especially like I've done it on Zoom calls and whatnot, where it's like a small coaching group, a lot of times there's tears. So it's because we are so bad in the helping professions at giving ourselves grace and allowing ourselves to be human, because we see ourselves as like we need to be superhuman that's saving the world in whatever our work is. In your work as teachers, you guys are saving the world. Even if you feel like you're failing half the time. Even if you're stressed and you're like, I'm burning out and I'm not keeping up, guess what? You're still doing amazing work. But you don't always feel that. Especially when the kids and the parents are not that appreciative and the system is making it hard on you. And so, you being able to enter into that space is so important, to give yourself compassion for the struggle that is whatever is happening in your work life. This also works in your personal life as well. I ended up rewriting my inner dialogue with myself. Because I used to have what I call a taskmaster, cracking the whip on me all the time because I had to be amazing. And that is an immense amount of pressure. Build up stress leads to burnout. If you have a taskmaster inside you must, in order to prevent burnout, you need to rewire it, and this is how I train it. So, in doing this, all I did was I created a little worksheet for myself, and at the end of the day, I might do up to 10, sometimes maybe it's only 2 or 3 uncomfortable things happen that day where I was like, ooh, that was awkward, ooh, I felt vulnerable there, or ooh, I really screwed up in that situation. However many things I could come up with, and I walk through this flow. So, and I have that worksheet for you guys. Before we move on to that though, this is what I want you guys to take away from this presentation, is I want you to remember that you're normal, because burnout is a predictable result of chronic stress. There's nothing abnormal, there's nothing wrong with you. I also want you to know that you're in control, because personal beliefs can be internal stressors that are exacerbating and aggravating the external stressors that are in your environment. They're basically the stimulus for the stress that leads to burnout eventually. But we can absolutely turn down the dial on how much those things stress us out if we can change those personal beliefs. Self-compassion is how you rewrite those beliefs. And I also want you to remember that you're human, that you can relieve stress buildup with self-compassion. So I wanted to give you guys that worksheet that I told you about. This also is a way that if this was helpful for you, it makes a huge difference to me to get your feedback and hear either how I could improve things or what a difference is made for you. So if you would please scan this QR code, and then when you go in there, it gives you a download of that worksheet so that you can go through that self-compassion flow. And this particular, like I said, getting feedback is, it makes a difference so that if you feel like this was helpful for you, people are more likely to bring me in for other stuff when I can share with them positive feedback from people who've been in my trainings, so they actually know that it's worth their time. So if you feel like this is worth your time, please scan this, and then as a thank you, I have that worksheet. I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to fill that out, or a couple seconds. We're actually like right on time. We are fabulously on time, which is great for having started late. But thank you. And it will take you through, and I'm not, also I should tell you, I'm not like a super spammer, like it asks for your email. I don't have like a newsletter or anything, so don't think I'm gonna be emailing you like every week, I promise. But it does have a question in there if you happen to know people. Like if you are interested, if you're like, this is really helpful and I feel like the rest of my school should hear about it, you can put that information in there. To be honest, like principals are not likely to bring me in unless you are referring me. They're just, principals are very concerned about, my people are busy, and we only have so much time and like professional development and things like that. They only fit in so much stuff. So if you feel like this is really beneficial, then putting that information in there, saying that yes, I know someone, either I or someone I know refers speakers, then that will allow me to follow up and potentially come to your school if your principal is actually interested in that. But I may reach out to you about that if you do fill out that part of the survey indicating that you would like me to come support you there. So I'm going to end on this. Feel free to continue with the finishing up the survey. If you would like to reach out to me, this is my email. I also just like to share that the reason that my logo is a ginkgo leaf is because of the Hiroshima ginkgo trees. There are ginkgo trees that were in Hiroshima when the bomb was dropped, and the ground there went to like 3,000 or 4,000 degrees Celsius. It fried everything, absolutely everything that was there. And amazingly enough, there were ginkgo trees that after a while, they continued to grow. They got fried, but they actually continued to bud and sprout leaves. And I made that my logo because it just, to me, was very symbolic of the resilience of the human spirit, where it does not matter what is happening in our environment, how adverse the conditions might be, how fried we might feel, but that we can recover from those things. We can be resilient against the stressors that are in our environment, and we can still bounce back, recover, and thrive, because there are trees that were there in Hiroshima, and they're still alive today, they're still growing. So I want to thank you guys for participating, for letting me come, for being involved, even though you were in the after lunch coma. I know everyone's a little tired and slow afterwards, but I appreciate your participation. I hope that this was helpful for you. I hope that you had some insights and some ahas of here's how I can prevent my own burnout this next school year, no matter my circumstances. Here's what's internal to me, what I have control of, and I can make a difference with. So thank you so much.